Welcome to the Gals Guide to the Galaxy podcast, where a group of gals gather for you one cool thing around our topic of the month. Is it ancient history? Is it breaking news? Is it safe for work? Well, that's up to each gal. All we know is that...
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Welcome back. I am Leah, and I am joined by Katie and Bonnie and Eden, and we are talking about our one cool disabled gal. So, Bonnie already talked about Tammy Duckworth, and Eden talked about Annie Jump Cannon. But before we dive back in, I want to get to know something random about our gal pals. I want to know, and it ties into my gal. What daily problems do you think wheelchair users have in your own town? Dun, dun,
Okay.
dun. Get it. Eden's like, I've got
I
a
heard
list.
an analogy that I thought was fantastic.
Yes.
Because Indianapolis is old enough to have a lot of, vintage homes,
Yes.
vintage buildings downtown, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Obviously, in 1820 whatever, when they were creating Indianapolis,
Right.
they weren't thinking of wheelchairs.
It wasn't an ADA town.
No. Because that didn't come until 1990.
Correct. Right.
Anyway, so I kind of think that there is a way that you can preserve
Yes.
the historical quality of a building
Yeah.
and still make it
Accessible. Yeah.
And somebody came up with a great analogy, or a great idea, which was just because somebody created something a certain way at a certain time
Mhm.
doesn't mean it has to stay that way.
Right.
Like, you can still have all of the beauty and the architecture and the, all the things we love about old buildings.
Yeah.
Just because you're switching some steps to a ramp,
Right.
that's not... I
It
don't
doesn't
think
take away the
that's-
history.
Right.
It takes away, or it adds to the enjoyment of it by
Absolutely.
more people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
No.
dig it.
I recently, a few weeks ago, I was in Iceland on my honeymoon.
Yes.
And I have to say that I noticed so much there that was not handicap accessible.
Oh, gotcha.
And a real
wow.
lack of people using any kind of wheelchairs or devices or seeming
Oh.
to have any kind of disabilities.
Right.
I thought it'd be very interesting to dig into that.
Yeah.
But kind of what Eden's saying is a lot of these different cities in Europe, they have that old architecture that wasn't
Yes.
designed for people. But to me, what I observed there didn't seem like they're making a push to make it accessible.
Right.
And I
yes.
won't say that we are here in the United States, because I think that the majority of city planners, people on boards, they think very ableist.
Right.
Yes.
They don't
Mhm.
see
Mhm.
the detriments, the impediments, the issues that can arise if if you have limited mobility or you're
Yeah.
using a wheelchair. I mean, I just think about having adequate handicap parking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
even if you have adequate, do you have room for vans with lifts?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
And that
Because
kind
you
of
need
space.
the extra wide
Mhm.
lanes,
Yes.
not just
Do
lanes.
all of
yeah.
your there's a new store there that Linden Tree just moved into that apartment building at the end
Yeah.
of both of our streets.
There's like no parking.
And I was also like,
yeah.
I only see stairs up to the store. I'm
Yeah.
like, so how are we getting people in wheelchairs in here?
Thank
I
you.
actually
I
do
thought
kinda
about that
think
too.
like that.
I thought about that whole new building.
Yeah,
I'm
and
like, well, you're not going to get any
I know-
accessibility people
No.
in there at all.
Based on my own not being in a wheelchair, I don't see
Mhm.
all the impediments, but I do think about those things when I look at our community,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
don't think it's
you know
accessible
what?
100%.
Yeah.
Here's the issue. In my brain,
Mhm.
it's more than just wheelchair accessibility.
Right.
Mhm.
Because older people
Mhm.
often have leg-related ailments.
Hips
They have
and
hip ailments.
yes,
They
exactly.
have
Backs.
knee ailments.
Yeah.
They have back ailments.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just a matter of wheelchair users.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
It's anybody that has trouble walking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Anybody for whom steps can be a problem.
Right. Where
You
ramps
know,
are much
anybody
easier.
that,
yeah.
that has a balance. Really, I
Yeah.
suffered very temporarily, but I suffered from vertigo.
oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I was the whole balance thing is just completely,
you realize how much you need it.
Yeah. And just having, handrails.
Yeah. To brace yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's not even just about, people who are physically disabled.
Yeah.
Right.
You
Yes.
know,
People
if
have
we're lucky,
physical
we're all going to be
limitations.
old.
Yeah. Yeah, right. If we're
And I
lucky
think-
enough to get old enough to need it, yeah.
The single way to solve this is
Mhm.
to have somebody with a physical limitation or a
Right.
disability in the room when these things are being planned and decided.
Exactly.
That's all it
Exactly.
takes, and then it
Mhm.
would be considered
Because then you can have pretty
a true
buildings
representation
that are
of our
actually.
community.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
Yep.
But funny, we don't, as a country, tend to ask the people who
Mhm.
have
We also tend to build things on a floodplain.
Yes.
They have lots of issues.
Just
Yes.
saying that. You don't even need to ask anybody. You just need to look on a map.
Yes. Very
But Bonnie,
true.
what about you, Jonah? How do you think wheelchair use is accessible that you have found?
Yeah, just things not being designed with them in mind.
Counter height.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
I
Movie
remember I was watching a video recently of a lady going down to the Ark Encounter in
Oh.
Kentucky, and outside there's like a Garden of Eden thing, and there's signs everywhere. It's just like footpath only.
Oh.
There's signs that you cannot access like 95% of that garden
Oh.
because it says footpath only.
Right.
And I'm like, how? Like, this is a public,
Yeah.
So
Dang.
by footpath only, they mean no wheelchair.
no wheelchair.
Yeah.
It's not wheelchair accessible. The outside,
Mhm.
and then she said the inside was very much not accessible either.
Gotcha.
That's
And I'm
just
like,
hideous.
I'm like, how have they not had a lawsuit yet?
Right. Well,
Like, I'm sure they
it's
have.
the Arc Center.
A whole bunch of lawyers and stuff.
They do.
I was
They
trying to
must-
Google
yeah.
it, but the only stuff that was coming up was with their like insurance stuff.
Right.
I don't know. There was something with like
Yeah.
their insurance. I think someone was maybe trying to classify it as a boat instead of a building or something, and then there was
Oh.
water damage, and they're like, "But it's a boat."
But it's about.
Yeah,
Okay.
there was something like that.
I will be a little more positive and give
Yeah.
a shout out. It's not as prevalent as it should be.
Yeah.
But did you know that Carmel actually has a playground available that has swings for people in wheelchairs?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
awesome.
it's down there off River Road and 116th. I totally
Oh.
forget the name of the park.
Okay. Yeah.
But I've been to it many times when I worked in the school
Yes.
system.
Yeah. Nice.
There is
And so
There's a school literally out my back door
Mhm.
and past the grove of trees.
Right.
And it's like right there. And it's an elementary school.
Yeah.
So it goes up to what, 5th grade or whatever?
Yes. Mhm.
And they have wheelchair accessible swings.
And did they have it because they had a student or because they were forward
I have no
thinking?
idea.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, either way it gets there, right?
Exactly.
Yes. So,
But
That's
when
the
we
hope,
moved
yeah.
in, we moved in 2006. We had a dog. We got a dog a few months later,
Mhm.
and we were walking the dog, and we just decided, let's go back there and
Yeah.
explore. And we
Fun.
saw them. And at first, I wasn't sure what they were.
oh, yeah, yeah.
And
Right.
then
You're like, that's a new kind of playground
yes.
equipment.
And then I happened to see a different playground with the same thing. And then I was like, oh, I get
That's
it.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I remember the first time I saw those platform. They're like a big circle
Mhm.
as a swing.
Mhm.
And my first thought was, oh, then you have a double swing. And I'm like, well, no, it's just more accessible. It's just
Yeah.
you can have more people, but you can also have more abilities that are also on the you know what I mean, on the
Yeah.
swing as well. And I'm like going, this is just lovely.
Totally.
I do think we record this near downtown Noblesville, and I know downtown Noblesville loves its little historicness. And I mean, yes, the sidewalks have for the blind, for the seeing impaired, it does have the beep beep beeps. The ramps are all for the sidewalks.
Mhm.
But so many of the buildings and the restaurants are not too bad, but the retail spaces,
a step up.
the step
Yeah.
up, or they're super cramped. Like you can't get a double wide stroller. And when I worked in retail, I worked at a video store. And so my own ruling was if a double wide stroller, because those moms will tell me if they can't fit, then I know a wheelchair will fit. So I always measured it for that, and then I knew that everybody could get around the different corners in the video store. That was my measuring tool. So I always thought, like, with the retail shops, I'm like, you can't get a stroller in here. You're definitely not getting a wheelchair
I
in
can't
here.
even get my fat ass through some of those stores downtown. I'm like, my butt is going to destroy a priceless artifact.
Exactly. When I see the
because of how
glass
this is
containers,
stacked.
and I'm like, no, my ass is going to knock that over, and I'm
Yeah.
paying for it. So
You guys are
it's
hilarious.
it is very tiny, and we do have fat asses. So both of these
Mine's
things are true
mainly
at the same time.
thighs,
Right. Yes. There you go. Yes. I've
Yeah.
got the belly and the ass. It's a 2-for.
The twofer.
It's a 2-for situation.
Although, you know
Oh my
what?
God.
I went to the Monon last week, and
Yeah?
I wore a bathing suit without a skirt.
What?
And I was actually inspired by a little girl online that apparently told her mom that her thighs are too powerful because they didn't fit in something. I'm like, well,
Oh, I love that.
nice.
Too
my thighs are
powerful.
just too powerful.
They are.
And
Nice.
Carmel, Indiana is going to have to deal with my powerful thighs because I'm not doing the drippy skirt
I love that.
100%.
at the Monon.
That is
Now,
good
the
stuff.
historic buildings, they can make adjustments.
Yes.
There was the
They can add a ramp. They can, look at elevators.
when we were in DC, we went to.
Yes.
It was under construction. We couldn't go in, and it was during COVID.
Right.
It was like 21, I think. But the building, the American Voter League building, wherever
Okay.
the building
yeah.
where Alice Paul unfurled the flag for
Yes.
suffrage is
Right.
there,
Yeah.
and they basically added on an elevator in the
Yes.
back.
You totally can.
So it's still it's not interfering with that entrance
Right.
where she had the little flag and stuff.
Right.
But it's off to the side and there's like a ramp to it,
Yeah.
and so they've
I think
kinda
the
just-
governor's
That's why
mansion
you can
did
do
the
it.
same thing.
Yeah.
Because
Just
that whole stretch
add-
of street is nothing but historic homes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's all possible with the technology we have today.
Mhm.
But yeah.
Would you like to hear about my gal?
Oh,
Yes.
definitely.
Sweet. All right. Well, I wanted to talk about this particular gal on this particular week for 2 reasons. Number one, Film Club is actually this Thursday at the time this episode releases. And so Thursday, June 20th, we're going to talk about the Netflix documentary Crip Camp. Has anybody seen Crip Camp? It's a fantastic documentary. It's actually produced by the Obamas. And it's super awesome, and we're going to be talking about it. It is about a disability camp that was like a sweet haven for people with disabilities in upstate New York. The other reason why I wanted to talk about this amazing gal, it is the 33rd anniversary of the America's Disability Act, which was signed into law July 26, 1990. So this will air at that same time. So I'm going to talk to you today about Judith Heumann. And it's Huemann. But she's very human. See what I did there? I'm sure she's never
Yes.
heard that joke. Because she has 2 books. Her first book is called Being Human. So obviously,
she's got it.
she already knew her own reference. And then the other book that she has is more of a young adult book, but is actually called Rolling Warrior. And Rolling Warrior is the book that I read. It is fantastic. Now, she does open that book with this quote, which very much sets the tone and checked me as well. She said, "The thing to know about me is this. If I had been born just 10 years earlier and my parents hadn't left Germany when they did, I would have been killed by the Nazis. Hitler considered us life unworthy of life, and if you were a young disabled child in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, the doctors recommended that your parents hand you over to a special children's clinic where you were either starved or poisoned."
Yes.
And that's how she starts her young adult book, and I'm like, I'm in.
She's not holding
I'm,
back.
I am empathizing. I am listening. I am holding in. Her father was 14 when he was sent from Germany to Brooklyn, New York to live with an uncle. He never saw his parents again. Judith's mother was 12 when she was sent away to a family she had never met in the United States. She also never saw her parents again. So that is how close Judy was when she said, if I had been born just 10 years earlier. Now, Judy got polio when she was 18 months old. Her first day of kindergarten, Judy's mother was told that she would be a fire hazard and that she would block the teachers from getting out of the school.
What the heck?
teachers.
Exactly.
Not the student.
Right. Well, probably also the kids as well.
Yeah.
But yeah. So Judy's mother tried to get her into a Jewish day school. The school said that first Judy needed to learn Hebrew. And so she did. And then the principal backtracked and wouldn't let her into the school for the same reason. So in first grade, the Board of Education sent a teacher to her home twice a week for 2.5 hours. And during those 2.5 hours, she was supposed to learn and read and do the math and all of the things that her friends had already been doing for 2 years. Like speed learn all of it in a couple of hours. She says, quote, "The world thought I was sick, and sick people stay home in bed, and they didn't go to school. They weren't expected to go outside, to be part of things, to be part of the world. I wasn't expected to be part of the world, and I felt nauseated that everyone else had known this but me. Had they kept it from me?" That's what she wrote it in her book, and I was like, no.
Aww.
Right? So in fourth grade, she went to the Health Conservation 21, which was a special ed kids school, which was in the basement. They barely ever saw the other kids, but at least they were in the same school as... yes, exactly. But she also went to summer camp. So this is where Crip Camp, the documentary, comes into play. She said, quote, "We were segregated and excluded, and only our parents expected anything of us. But we had each other." So Camp Jened started in 1951, and it's in the Catskill Mountains of Upper New York. But in the 60s and 70s, the hippies took it over.
Camp got a lot more fun.
It got a lot more fun, like smoking weed with the counselors, like learning how to kiss with the counselors, like a lot of... I was like, they said it was utopia for disabled folk, and I'm like, yes.
I didn't get to go to that camp.
It looks amazing. Yes. So... back to Judy. Judy was allowed to go to high school in Brooklyn because, quote, "her mom and a gang of other disabled kids' moms." I just love the gang.
Gang of moms.
Gang of moms.
They had successfully pushed the New York City School Board of Education into allowing some of us to go to school.
So you stopped being a fire hazard, huh?
Right.
Right.
Well, you just need a gang of moms in Brooklyn.
Moms can do anything.
I'm just saying.
Totally.
Yeah.
So there was about 20 other disabled kids in the school, and they really kind of stuck together. They had an 1.5-hour bus ride to go to this school. And so they had a lot of time to hang out with each other. And they also all went to Camp Jened together as well, too. So that kind of nice. She said, quote, "I felt closer to them than I did to any other non-disabled kids. They made me feel strong. The regular kids made me feel like a raisin in a bowl of candy."
Oh,
Right? She's very good with her words.
Yes.
So then Judy went to Long Island University, and she wanted to be the first teacher in a wheelchair in New York City. Love the dreams. I love being a teacher. Because going from a fire hazard, being told a fire hazard to a teacher is like a brilliant little arc.
Right.
The last thing that was between Judy and her teaching license was a medical exam.
What the?
Thank you.
that makes no sense.
Correct. It does not. So it was invasive, but not only that, there was 5 steps to the building. 5 steps. No accessible entrance with her wheelchair. So that was the first of it. So she asked a friend to help her to get up the 5 steps and to stay with her. The doctor told her to come back for a second appointment with her braces and her crutches to show that she could walk. She could not walk.
Oh my gosh.
What does walking have to do with teaching?
Correct. Right? Exactly. And so she came back and did not have her braces and her crutches. Also had a lawyer with her, but they wouldn't let the lawyer into the room. And Judy wrote this. She said she could do or say anything she wanted to me. And there was nothing I could do about it. There were no rules. There were no boundaries. It was discrimination. I was denied a teaching license, and the reason that it stated was that she had polio.
Oh my gosh.
They didn't even say just she has polio. She can't be a teacher. Medical exam.
Because polio clearly affects your brain
Sure.
and your teaching skill.
But they also said she was insubordinate for not bringing her crutches and showing she could walk.
but I can't walk.
I can't walk.
Wow.
So she sued.
I would for her.
Right. The case was settled without a trial.
Yeah.
Now, 3 years later, Judy has moved from New York to San Francisco, where she founded the Disabled in Action, the DIA. And she worked at the Center for Independent Living. And I love this place. It provided accessible housing, transportation, and helpers for disabled individuals.
Nice.
So it was for disabled individuals to live an adult life with all of the resources that they needed, and a helpline for like, oh, you need to get a bus, you know, for this last minute. We'll get you a bus. We'll get somebody who can get you there. It was like amazing. So it's 1977. And she's protesting about Section 504 of the San Francisco Federal Building. So Section 504 is the regulations of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. I know it's a lot of numbers, but basically it was the U.S. federal civil rights protection for people with disabilities. This certain dickhead named Califano was the U.S. Secretary of HUE, the Health Organization and Welfare, and he just refused to sign it. It was just sitting there. He just wasn't going to sign it. He was going to add more shit to it, but he just wasn't going to sign it. So they're all protesting saying, sign the 504. Just sign the 504. Like, as it is, don't change it. And it had been a year since this thing had, like, passed and everything. So Judy's in the crowd. And there's these powerful speeches. And at one point, she says it was an out-of-body experience. And she says, let's all go to the HUE. Let's go to the federal government because they can't steal our civil rights. And they all rushed the building.
Yay.
Oh, I love that.
They took over an office in the 4th floor of the building. And they hosted a sit-in.
Nice.
There were 75 people there at first.
At first?
At first, it will grow.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
At the same time, there was organized 504 sit-ins in other cities. So there was 50 people who stormed the building in D.C. There were 7 people who stormed the sit-in in Denver. And there was 20 in L.A. So on the same day of protest, they had 4 cities that they were sitting in federal buildings in a sit-in.
Demanding their rights.
Yes! Demanding them for California to just sign the damn paper. Judy set up committees for each other. There was a food committee, a medications committee, a press outreach committee, and recreation.
No.
It was so cute. They had like wheelchair races in the hallways. I mean, like, it was adorable. So 75 people in the San Francisco grew to 125.
Oh, wow.
Because there was protests going on outside.
Yes.
And the building was open. It's not like they shut down the building. They just basically took over the 4th floor. So more people could join or leave. You know what I mean? The sit-in as they wanted. Now, D.C. was starved out. They wouldn't let food in. They just basically starved them out. So D.C. closed down. Denver and New York folded because there was no personal assistance and there was no accessible bathrooms.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Exactly. Now, at the San Francisco building, Brad Lomax, a young protester who had multiple sclerosis, was also a member of the Black Panther Party.
Nice.
And the Black Panthers forced themselves into the building.
Love it.
And they said to security, we will stop at nothing to bring the media's attention on HUE if you don't let us in the building. And they got starved out. So the Panthers brought them a hot meal every night of the protests for dinner and left them food for breakfast the next day. So they had food. All 125 of them had food from the Panthers. So
love those Panthers.
thank you. Yes. So the governor of California supported the sit-in, and he wrote a letter to President Carter. The United Farm Workers, Cesar Chavez himself, wrote in a letter in support of the sit-in as well. And they got word that the White House was going to call them. But the government doesn't play very nice with protesters, especially in the 70s. And they tried shit like saying, oh, there's a bomb outside. Everybody has to get out immediately.
Oh my gosh.
So Judy said, well, I don't care. I'm going to bed. Let them wake me up when it does go off. But they decided to wake up and tell the other people, okay, there's a bomb threat. Y'all do what you're going to do. Nobody left. It was just a way to try to get them out of the building. And no bomb blew up at all whatsoever. On day 4, they were cut off from making any outgoing calls. One important call did come in. President Carter's office. It wasn't President Carter. It was a woman on the phone who said, quote, "The president is aware of the situation in Los Angeles and San Francisco. He gives you his assurance that he will become personally involved in the issue of the 504 and the issue of the regulations." Bullshit. So the protesters issued a statement. Eden, you'll love this. Because they were cut off from communications, the deaf signers inside signed to the deaf protesters outside,
Nice.
and they relayed this message. "We are encouraged by the contact made by the White House. However, the statement is not adequate, for Carter failed to address the primary reason for this sit-in. That is, the regulations January 21st must be signed. The proposed changes from Califano are not negotiable. Califano is reviewing these changes, and they are unacceptable and non-negotiable." Can you imagine the angry signer that is like doing? Yeah, anyway.
Drew a line.
Right. Now, the LA office did get confused by the White House phone call. They thought Carter was actually going to help, and so they left the building. So now it's just the San Francisco office that is left. A delegation of 34 protesters, including Judy, during this protest, went to D.C. to get Califano's attention. They went to his house, had a little candlelight vigil on his driveway.
Oh, I love that.
To get his attention. He left through the back door. They also went to Carter's church. He left through the side door. Yeah, sure. They also went to, while they were in Washington, D.C., they talked to senators. So they were trying to get senators on their side. They also went to the White House, but they were stopped at the front door of the White House because the guards were worried they'd start another sit-in. The White House.
Oh, my God.
Also, by the way, at this time, the White House did not have a single accessible bathroom, and it was not accessible to wheelchairs.
Oh, of course.
They could
Shocking.
really even get in. So Judy went to see Califano at his office, and the guards wouldn't let her in. I mean, her specifically. She was not allowed in. So she had a motorized wheelchair because she also had not too much flexibility in her arms. So it took her forever, but she eventually got a motorized wheelchair. So this is what she did. She flicked the switch on her motorized wheelchair and went full speed at the building.
Ram it.
Yes!
At the last minute, the guards jumped aside and she smashed into Califano's office.
I love it.
Then the other wheelchair people who were with her followed. So just smash, smash,
Nice.
smash. It's now day 22 of the protest.
Wow.
And there is a massive rally in front of the White House that they all organized. They bring a lot of attention to this issue. There are the 34 of them from the San Francisco unit. Yes. It is very victorious. Somebody gets Califano in an elevator admitting that he has not looked at the documentation, that he is aware of it because he was denying it. I don't know what you're talking about. That basically they got him recorded saying, "I just don't care." That embarrassed him, and so on day 24 of the sit-in, he signed Section 504 with no changes whatsoever because he got embarrassed.
Good for him.
They
getting embarrassed.
Exactly. He was basically shamed into signing it, but whatever. He signed it, right?
Not ashamed to say it.
Correct.
Just ashamed that he got caught.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes, finally somebody got him on tape, basically. So, so the delegation of 34 flew back to San Francisco, where everybody stayed until they got back. They actually decided to stay one more night to have a celebratory, like, it's our last night. Let's just stay. Like 26 days. They didn't need to stay this long, but they stayed 26 days, and they left to a enormous crowd chanting to them, "Power to the people." And they were like high-fiving everybody, and you can see them like leaving the building, and it's like absolutely magical. But guess what? Things didn't change. Things didn't change overnight, of course, right? Exactly. So for the next 10 years, Judy spent her time challenging naysayers who said that federal buildings, making them accessible was way too expensive. So this was her job. She basically worked on solutions and examples. She basically said that putting a wheelchair lift on a bus costs the same amount as putting air conditioning on that bus. And that if more people can use it because there's a wheelchair lift, the buses will make more money.
Duh.
Mm-hmm.
But she had to explain this
To
because
the
they're
people.
idiots. Right, exactly. So in 1989, the Senate passed the Americans with Disabilities Act, but it was struck down in the House of Representatives. So Judy wrote this: "Our people came to the U.S. Capitol from all over the country. To reach the main entrance of the Capitol, you must climb 83 marble steps.
Oh, God.
It's not accessible.
Wow.
The protesters assembled at the bottom of the steps, and then slowly, one by one, people pushed themselves out of their wheelchairs, fell on the bottom step, and inched themselves up the 83 steps.
Oh,
my
wow.
gosh.
It is in the Crip Camp documentary. You can also find it, and it's heartbreaking, and it's empowering, and it's like every single feel. People were on their bellies. People were on their backs. They were refusing assistance. Anybody helping them. They're like, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get to the top of the stairs. And it was an act of defiance, and it was an act of ability. And that got George Bush to sign the damn Disabilities Act.
Nice.
Again, because of the embarrassment and the shaming of why are these American citizens crawling on their backs and on their sides up 83 steps. So yeah, it's just absolutely
Wow.
heartbreaking that the government was trying to ignore them, and they're like, well, let me show
Not
you.
gonna ignore us for much longer.
Exactly, right? So when the Disability Act passed, the date was July 26, 1990. Judy writes this. It's actually the final line in her book, Rolling Warrior. Quote, "I was 41 years old, and I was finally an equal citizen."
Oh my gosh.
Right? So Judy Heumann is a remarkable person. I think she's somebody we should know along with like Malala, Rosa
Yes.
Parks, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She's like right in there with those
Yeah.
big names. I would see her and be like, yeah, I know of her, but I didn't know face to name.
Yeah.
Judy Heumann. She's somebody I think everybody should know. She died this year in March.
Mm.
Oh,
She
wow.
was 75 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wow.
yeah, exactly. So that's Judy Heumann.
What an awesome story.
Right?
I love her.
I love her so
And
much.
such a huge legacy.
Yeah.
Did
Yeah.
you know kids at our schools still have things called 504 plans?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can have a 504 plan or an IEP. and
Yes,
it's
I
kind
know
of
the IEPs.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the 504 is kind of a different or lesser support than the IEP. It's
Yeah.
a little less of a legal document, but it still provides all of
Yep.
the kids. It deals more, I think, with like physical disabilities,
Right.
or maybe somebody's diabetic or whatever they
Mhm.
What
need to be able to
medications
do.
and- yeah.
There's a lot of kids that have like ADHD that have 504 plans, but that's
Ah.
literally what it's called, is a 504
Yep.
plan.
We were just talking about
Yeah.
them today.
Oh, look at that. Sweet.
And at the college
Comes from the
level-
sit-in. Yeah.
At the college level, they don't have IEPs. They only have 504 plans, right?
Actually,
Oh.
not quite.
Really? Okay.
Because if you are like a high school student, you're graduating,
Mhm.
and you have an IEP, you can take that IEP to your university
Oh.
and give it to their Office of Disability Services.
yeah.
And they will honor,
And
whatever-
advocate?
It's in there.
yes,
Oh,
they will honor
nice.
as much as they can.
Yes,
Right.
of course, of course.
But they will. So it's,
Ah.
even though IEPs are made for K through 12,
Yeah.
as long as you have one,
You can still
You
use
just-
that document at
yes.
the college level.
because at
Yeah.
It's not
Marion,
held to the same accountability, right?
No,
Theoretically.
it is.
It is. Okay.
it
Okay.
is at Marion University and
Nice.
at Vincent's University.
Yeah.
They each have Vincent. Usually they're called Office of Disability Services.
Oh, okay.
At Marion, it's the Personalized Learning Center. But yeah, you just
Yeah.
give them your IEP or
Oh,
whatever your
sweet.
paperwork is, and they will honor it.
Yeah.
And the students can get accommodations.
Sweet. As they should.
Absolutely.
Right.
Exactly. Any questions about Judy? Sometimes called Judith, but seems so formal. She calls herself Judy.
I love
Like,
her.
yes, right? Exactly.
Totally.
Yeah.
She's flippin' flangin' adorable.
I think there was a drunk history.
There is.
episode,
There
and
is.
It's got
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Zach Anner in it, who's
Mm.
also amazing.
Yes, he has the sexiest of all the palsies.
Yes.
So Jack Anner is hilarious. He has like an exercise with Jack Anner, and he's like,
Workout Wednesdays.
Workout Wednesdays. That's what it was. I love those because it's all about just do whatever you can. It's all good, and it's just him being silly, and it's lovely.
He has an amazing book, and he did the audio book for it.
Oh yes,
which is also like amazing. Just the way that he talks.
Yes,
and his comedic timing, and his book is "If at Birth You Don't Succeed."
So good. I will put some show notes of Jack Anner of just you have to experience the awesomeness.
Wow.
At some point, like a quarter of the way in the book, he's like talks about how it's like difficult for people to do some things or something, and he starts talking about like reading, like doing this audiobook. Because he has to keep taking breaks and stopping.
Right. He starts breaking the fourth wall in his
oh my gosh,
own
that's
audiobook.
hilarious.
It's fantastic. Sweet. All right. Do you want me to wrap it up? I'm waiting for Bonnie
can I
to be
give you a little side note?
Yes.
We were talking about how the Panthers showed up and brought food.
Mm-hmm.
Black people love their food.
I know, exactly.
Because the Black Panthers started
the breakfasts,
the breakfast
yes.
for the little kids,
yeah,
to make sure they had food.
Yep,
because lots of people are poor, and kids were going to school without food.
Right, and they were going to school hungry, and that was so they got to have a good start to the day.
So they started breakfast programs in Black communities across the country, and
that's why they couldn't serve them breakfast because they were doing it for their own communities.
Yes,
but they were bringing it to them. Yeah.
So the reason that schools today have breakfast and lunch, maybe not lunch, but the breakfast programs,
right? Yeah,
is inspired by the early days of the Panthers. Nobody is gonna fess up to that.
No, they're not. But it was a program that worked. It was a program that was needed.
Exactly.
I love the Panthers.
So I love it that Black folk came and helped all the people with disabilities.
Exactly. I also just love it because the line in the book was, "Oh my God, the Panthers are breaking in," and then Brad's like, "I called them." And so then it was like, oh, okay. But they were kind of like, nobody's getting into this building, but the Black Panthers have broken into the building, and they have food.
Yes. Oh, that's funny.
Because nobody wanted to mess with them.
No.
Lovely.
But they were really cool people.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. They were community organizers in the best way. When they saw somebody who was, being treated less than and needed something to eat, they're like, well, we got you there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sweet. All right, you want me to wrap it up?
Sure.
All right, well, that wraps it up for this week. Join us next week for another cool woman of history as the Gals Guide podcast continues. Thanks for listening. For show notes, links, and images from this week's show, visit galsguide.org. Want exclusive stuff like deleted bits and major bloopers? Become a Gals Guide patron today. Thanks for listening.